Welcome to the Live Up Podcast, where we revisit the movies from our youth to see if they live up. Quick note on how this will go. We will review, discuss, and score the movie in question to see if it lives up to us now as adults and whether it lives up to kids today. I'm Jess Latterman.
And I'm Amanda Treat. On today's episode, once again, it's time for our October Spooktacular. We're recording on the first day of fall, and someone in my household went on a shopping bender at the dollar store today and brought home dozens of skulls.
It's always what you like to see when your spouse comes home.
Just, wee, look what I got. It's like skulls. We have a white picket fence in front of our house that is now piped with dozens of skulls. Beware entering our yard. Right. So let's get into the spirit of the season with goblins, monsters, and the bog of eternal stench. It's 1986 Labyrinth.
Woohoo.
Jess, you requested this film. What is your history with Labyrinth?
Well, as you know, Amanda, I believe you are part of my history with this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you are. We'll get into that. So this is, to me, and also it's my birthday choice, as your birthday choice was Lost Boys, and my birthday is next week.
Yes.
And you knew I was going to pick this one.
Yes. Happy birthday in 2 days.
That's
We're a little early here,
early.
but by the time you're listening to this episode, happy birthday.
Yes, I will be older by the time you listen. But this is the classicest of classic 80s movies to me. I watched this so much. I think I went through a period of time where it was possibly once a week, or at least that was my perception of it. I'd say as a kid, I vaguely knew that David Bowie was a rock star, but I'm so sorry to my generation. He'll just always be the Goblin King to me. That's just what it's going to be. I loved this movie as a kid so much. It's one of those that are high up there. It's not quite Princess Bride in my memory, but it's close. Where you come into the story is that you and I watched this. The first time I watched it is what I'm going to say an adult. So I guess I was technically an adult. I was 21. We watched it in December 2001 at Sarah Stanley's house. Yep. And that is the first time. I think it's the first time you watched it. And it was the first time I watched it as an adult. Fast forward 20 something years, and I watched it again with my kids earlier this summer. And then I watched, because I watched it a while ago, I wanted to watch it again. So I just casually mentioned to my wife, like, oh, I'm just going to watch Labyrinth again so it's fresh before I record with Amanda. And my son heard it and he's like, wait, you're going to watch Labyrinth? I'm going to watch it with you. And so I watched it with my kids again. And, I had to turn it off halfway through because it was bedtime. It was, weekday. I know. I had to pause it because it was like really late on a school night. And oh my God, my kids caused holy hell. They were very upset. And my son threatened to watch it without me, the whole thing. So that's my basic history. More of a recent history.
Very important question. Where was the pause?
Oh, God.
What scene did you stop it on?
I stop it on? I stopped it right after they slid down to the bog of eternal stench.
Oh, no.
I know.
You left them in the bog of eternal stench all night?
I left them hanging in the bog.
Oh, gross.
It's pretty gross.
Oh, no.
So I have an extensive history with this, but I think more extensive than yours, perhaps?
Yes. So we were not allowed to watch Labyrinth as kids in the Treat household after the Dark Crystal debacle. Please listen to our Dark Crystal episode.
Yes. Jim Henson, another classic. Yes.
Yeah, just my parents were like absolutely not taking the risk on this next one.
Yeah.
So growing up, I knew who David Bowie was. I knew who he was as a singer. And I knew about this movie, but I honestly don't think I watched it until we did that end-to-end viewing of it on our road trip up to Sarah's house our senior year of college, which was the same road trip where we had to push a car away from a snowbank and we nearly froze to death in a snowstorm. Please listen to our Babes in Toyland episode for more details on our near death.
I forgot we talked about it.
Vermont.
I forgot we talked about it in that episode.
Yeah. Yes, we did.
But I think we watched this movie right after we drove through that snowstorm, right? It was the same
I think we got
night.
to Sarah's house and we were like, haha, we almost died. And she was like, want to watch Labyrinth? And I was like, yeah, great. So because I saw this for the first time all the way through when I must have been 22 because I'm a year older than you guys. I will say, I don't think I've ever seen this movie sober.
Really?
And I was commenting on that when I just rewatched it again for this podcast. Like, I've never not been drunk while watching this
It's
movie.
possibly the way to
And
go.
it really seems like it should be
Even
enhanced by something.
Elena, my wife, who hasn't really watched it that much, possibly, she was like, how much do you have to be tripping to write this script? And I
Yeah.
think it was at
Oh
that
my God,
moment where
yeah.
like the Fraggle Rock things were like throwing their heads in the air. She was like, what
Oh,
is
that
this?
scene.
Yeah. I'm
Yep.
like, it's amazing is what it is.
This lends itself to a lot of chemical enhancement for peak viewing. And I say that to anyone who is of the age and can legally purchase these things. So another thing we need to say right now, this is a good time to give a shout out to our podcast's resident Labyrinth expert, our friend Sarah, who happens to share the same name and kind of looks like the main character in
A
the
little
film.
bit, yeah.
Her daughter
Yeah, she
really looks
does.
like the main character in the film. I would like to think that teenage Sarah was able to conjure David Bowie and have him kidnap people at random in real life. She just seems like she would have had that teenage power.
That would have been a
the
really
way
handy
Sarah does in
power.
this film. Right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Can't confirm that, so we'll move on. And I am happy to report that last Halloween, Sarah, our friend, not the character in this movie, was able to drunkenly recite the entire opening to this film while dressed as Barbie at her Halloween
That's
party.
perfect.
So, hello, Sarah.
And while we're giving shout outs, I think our number one fan listener, Liz, hello, Liz, who left me some detailed thoughts on this movie. And I think that she and I had very similar viewing experiences with our kids. So I'll get into that a little bit as we progress. But hello, Liz, as well. Liz and Sarah. It's a reunion.
Right. Sarah and Liz, we will do our best not to fuck this podcast up for you. All right. Jess, speaking of trying hard, not fucking it up, would you like to give a plot summary of Labyrinth?
I would. And I like this snide remark about not fucking it up because as listeners don't know, I fuck up all the time. But because I'm the editor, I just edit it out. So
magically
it goes away. All right. So if you're not like me or Sarah, our friend, not the character, or Liz, I will remind you of what the plot is. So right here, we're basically at peak Jim Henson, which I might have also said during our review of Dark Crystal. So it's a tween girl whose name is Sarah, is so wrapped up in her own tweenness that she manifests David Bowie, who is the Goblin King, to take away her baby brother. And then she has to go through the labyrinth, or my now adult interpretation is that she basically has to grow up in order to get her brother back. And that's the basic summary. But weirdly, in this movie, I'd say one other point is, yes, there's, I guess, good guys and bad guys, but not really. Everyone, all the characters in this movie, you might at some point root for them or think they're annoying. There's not necessarily a clear line of good and bad.
Just piggybacking off of what you just said with my nerdy notes here, this peak Jim Henson, absolutely, in this movie is the brainchild of so many of the greatest artists from our childhood. So Jim Henson, so established, so peak, and then he has attracted George Lucas to come produce this.
I noticed that in the credits. I did not realize
after
that.
Indiana Jones, and I think they're making Willow simultaneously.
Oh my God.
Yeah, this is a George Lucas produced movie. I mean, this movie is Jim Henson and the Jim Henson Creature Shop. So like beautiful. I mean, they're getting so good at making, they're not Muppets, but puppets. I'm going to call them Muppeteers accidentally. We know the Muppets are separate from this. But yeah, his team is so good at what they do. They're so good at making these puppets. They're so good at their world building. It's just friggin' awesome. But that combined with a script that was written by Monty Python's Terry Jones.
What?
So this is basically a Monty Python crossover with Jim
Interesting.
Henson.
I did not know that.
When you watch it, knowing that Monty Python has a hand in this, or specifically Terry Jones, may he rest in peace, you see the randomness of Monty Python injected in here. Like when that worm pops up and he's talking to Sarah, and you're just like, what is this?
Yeah.
Like, what is this whole conversation? Where are we going with this? Like that's so Monty Python. I mean, the Bog of Eternal Stench feels very Monty Python meets Jim Henson, doesn't it?
I guess it does. It's
like, what is happening here? Or just the politeness factor that has to go on trying to get out of the bog of eternal stench when they're sitting there and they're like fighting with Sir Didymus there about, well, the rules are
right. The rules are, I need to give you permission. And they're like, can you just give us permission? It's very funny.
Yeah. This movie has the Muppet chaos crossed with the Monty Python silliness. They also have Trevor Jones, who we've seen him before because he did the Dark Crystal soundtrack. He did Oscar winner, I think, for Last of the Mohicans. Like, great soundtrack on this film. They got Laura Phillips and Elaine May all in on the shooting script the moment they found out David Bowie was in it. I think this is like 1980s All-Stars made a movie, and it's got puppets, and it's got fart jokes. They knew they wanted a rock star in the role of the Goblin King, so they thought Michael Jackson.
Oh, that would have been terrible.
Prince. They considered Mick Jagger.
Oh, interesting.
And it was Jim Henson's kids, his daughters specifically, were like, Bowie, we want Bowie.
Oh my God, gotta credit the Henson girls then with great casting.
Okay. Solid.
Yeah.
So one thing I do want to talk about as well before we get into the characters, but we need to talk about the rules of this labyrinth. It's kind of like Field of Dreams, but hopefully we agree this time on what the rules of the labyrinth are.
Massive disagreement in the Field of Dreams episode of what happens to Terrence Mann when he goes into the cornfield. I should say we recorded that before James Earl Jones passed away.
Yes.
So
he also rested in peace. And we were shown a fourth option that we hadn't even considered when we did that episode, that Terrence Mann, James Earl Jones's character, was a ghost the whole time. I like that one.
I like that one too. It's like very M. Night Shyamalan kind of edge to it.
But also like that makes Kevin Costner's character really just like a reverse Large Marge, where he's going around the country picking up ghosts. I
love all the references to early episodes of this podcast. Yeah. I feel like we're not going to disagree that vehemently about the rules here. But what rules do you
Probably not. So, all right. It's established early on. So Sarah, the main character in this movie, she has sort of wished away her brother by accident because she is
a tween.
Really she's not a good babysitter. No. Can we just be honest
she's a tween.
About that? Like,
that's what it is.
She's got her strengths and her weaknesses, and one of her weaknesses is babysitting. I would never, ever hire her to babysit a small child. Nope. She's told she has 13 hours to get through the labyrinth into the Goblin King's castle. Time limit seems subject to change, but that is how she recovers her brother and is not revealed to be the worst babysitter in the world to her parents. If she fails to do that, her 1-year-old brother Toby gets turned into a goblin and has to stay there forever.
Yeah, that's how I interpret it.
So question, are all the other goblins in this castle stolen babies?
I think so. When I was a kid, I never thought that deeply about it. But when I rewatched it again recently, I had that same, I'm like, oh, I guess all those fun little goblin puppets are stolen babies.
So do all of them have an older sister who got yelled at a lot because she didn't get through the labyrinth?
Because she turned her baby brother into a goblin? Yeah, probably.
Maybe.
So just one quick note on that. Our friend Liz noticed this about watching this with her son, who has an older sister, and my son, who has an older sister. I noticed the same thing. We noticed this independently.
And you and I are both older sisters.
That's
and brothers
right.
Who we did not wish away to the Goblin King because we didn't know Sarah yet.
That's right. We did not.
Only she has the skill to summon David Bowie.
I know. Maybe things would have been different. We would have been terrible babysitters. But my son did not like that part of the plot. I remember him being like, wait, why does she want to give away her baby brother? And then he sort of got over it and kind of forgot about it in the second viewing of the movie. But for the first viewing, it like kind of bothered him. And Liz said the same thing about her son, that it really bothered him.
Interesting.
That, why would the older sister want to give away the baby? So it is, and it's kind of funny. It's something that didn't occur to me because we are older sisters with younger brothers. So perhaps we related to
We're like, there were moments after I stepped on all those Ninja Turtle like weapons that were scattered all around the house like Legos. Like, yeah, there's a moment.
I mean, how many ninja weapons can you step on before you're like, off to the goblins?
Get David Bowie up in here. All right. So there's, I think, more, or just like our understanding of how the labyrinth works. There's penalty areas. I'm calling it that.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it.
The hockey penalty box here. So
2 minutes for
you can fall
icing.
in you can fall into an oubliette, which are these sort of caves with no doors unless your buddy comes along with like a magic door. But these are places where people get forgotten,
Yeah.
is how it's explained. And if you know the word oublier from French, it means forget.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay. You would know
Yeah,
that with
so
your
these
various trips to
the
France.
oubliettes.
Yeah.
Yes, my colleagues in France would be all over this word. So yeah, you can get stuck in an oubliette and just be flat out forgotten, which would suck. Then we mentioned the bog of eternal stench, which just apparently is the worst smell you've ever smelled in your life. And the whole thing is like bubbling with like sulfuric farting
Oh,
noises.
which was a
And
huge
just, I
hit
mean, it's
for my 7-year-old.
hilarious,
Yeah.
but kind of visceral. Like when you watch these kind of like bubbly farts coming out of the mud,
Yeah.
you're just like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
I don't want to be there. There's a rule: if you touch it, that you smell bad forever. So it's not the highest stakes of anything we've come across on this podcast with all these movies we've reviewed, but smelling bad forever would be annoying.
I
So,
do remember as a kid thinking that that was like massive stakes. The bog of
yeah.
eternal stench just might as well be the ninth circle of
Like,
hell.
never mind, there's these other creatures in there that are trying to decapitate Sarah
Yeah,
in one
whatever.
of the scenes. Like, decapitation, but like, no, you don't want to smell bad
Yeah.
forever. Man, you'll never recover from that. Yeah, the rules themselves
They
change
do
a lot,
change. I do
which-
not vehemently disagree, like the way I disagreed with the cornfield situation. I'd say there's also some life rules that are also apply throughout. So the life rules,
Mhm.
and this is what I liked watching about it the second time around as an adult. And I didn't even like necessarily pick this up when we were 20 and 22 and watching back in 2001.
Yeah, we were drinking a few after our near-death
We were. I
experience.
wasn't exactly pondering the meaning of Labyrinth, but like the two things that come to mind are things aren't fair, things happen and they're not fair, and the Sarah character pitches a fit the way honestly any tween would about things not being fair, or any
Mhm.
kid would, and that's really
Yeah.
relatable to I think kids watching this.
She has so many lines in the earlier half of this where she is yelling, "That's not fair,"
Yeah.
at her parents. She's yelling it at the Goblin
Yeah.
King. She's just yelling it out at the world. That's
That's
not
not
fair.
fair.
And usually whatever the scenario is doesn't seem particularly fair, but at the same time,
Yeah.
there's a lesson here, Sarah.
Things are not going to be fair, but that's part of it. And, you know, at some point, the Goblin King even decides it's not 13. He speeds up time. So he cheats. And that's just part of the thing that you have to accept. And there's another one, you know, the way forward is sometimes the way back home. Like there's some of these, and not thinking too deeply in it, but these are these weird rules that come up. And I think that her character throughout when she accepts these, and she accepts that things aren't fair and accepts that there are going to be setbacks, it actually moves things forward. So in some ways, that's part of the rule of the Labyrinth, which I really appreciated and enjoyed watching as an adult. As a kid, I was like, yeah, that isn't fair. The Goblin King sucks.
Yeah. No, it's life lessons tucked in under the guise of these are the rules of the Labyrinth.
Yeah.
Maybe subconsciously get into your kid brain, and then you grow up and find yourself yelling, "That's not fair" at something.
Yeah, well, sometimes the Goblin King's just going to
feels
fast
like a
forward time.
David Bowie situation right here.
Just dance, magic, dance it away. It's okay.
Which, by the way, we have a 3-hour playlist that we play at Halloween every year, and I realized that is not on there.
Must be
that
fixed.
I have a big star on my episode notes, and I was like, "The dance, magic, dance has got to go."
It has to. Yeah.
On the earlier half, that's like less creepy for the younger trick-or-treaters, and they'll have no idea what it is. But their parents will be like,
yes!
yeah. Also, referencing an earlier episode, Cry Little Sister is on there from the Lost Boys episode.
That's a good mix, Amanda.
It's a creepy song. It doesn't make any sense, but
I want to trick-or-treat at your house.
Oh, you would.
I know there's a lot of skulls there now.
There's dozens and dozens of skulls piked on our picket fence. During COVID, started doing a Halloween maze.
Oh my God. Like you have the labyrinth.
Yeah, so we have a labyrinth. Oh my God, it is a labyrinth. So the candy is in the maze, but there's all this creepy stuff and strobe lights.
That's amazing.
We have like a walkway, and there's this witch whose like eyes have been gouged out.
Oh my God.
And we have a strobe light on her.
Core
and
memories
it just makes
here.
this creepy horror sounds. And you have to go all the way up to her and like get the candy from her. We have had adults go running screaming off our property down that part of the yard.
That's great.
And the witch is named Kellyanne Conway,
Oh,
which
excellent name.
the pandemic was a certain time and
It
place,
was.
but
I agree with that name.
different things in our yard have different political names. And Kellyanne has always been the name of the witch, but she is the scariest thing
Makes
ever
adults
in
run
our
and scream
yard.
from your yard.
Oh my God. Yeah. All right. So winding us back to the actual movie
Right.
Labyrinth and not our Halloween situation with all of our cool music and our really scary Kellyanne witch. Do you want to talk about the world building that goes
I
on in this
did,
movie
because
a little
I
bit?
think kind of hand in hand with the rules, like the labyrinth itself and then the Goblin City, it's just the details are amazing. I mean, Jim Henson is brilliant at building a world. And I think we talked about this for Dark Crystal. You're just in the world and it's incredibly detailed, even down to the glistening of the trees, the burping stench, the eyeball plants that are watching. Like she just goes down a corridor and there's plants that have eyeballs. There's really funny things like the fairies bite you.
You see at the beginning, like Hoggle's spraying them with insecticide and killing them.
Yeah, and also it's like it changes. It's not one note. Like sometimes it looks kind of medieval, like sometimes it looks like a forest. So it's just the worlds that it builds is incredibly detailed, and I think that kids also really respond to it. Once again, and we kind of crank about this all the time, that you really don't need the CGI here. It's well done without it.
One of the most beautiful shots is the moment where Sarah realizes that she can like walk into the wall and take a left or a right. And that is all done with practical effects. They're just doing a visual, the camera's positioned so that you cannot see.
It's like an illusion.
Two separate walkways.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And they're doing that all like, okay, let's figure this out, how to angle this so that the viewer can't see that there's different paths she can take.
Yeah.
And then she just steps into the wall and is like, oh, okay, this way.
Right? I loved that. I thought that is a great example of it where you don't need like a CGI reveal of a door or something.
Yeah, they don't dissolve her into like the wall or anything weird. Like they built a set that literally looks like one flat wall that you can walk into. And so super cool. I would love to be on that set. Like that would be so much fun to just explore all these things they built. I will say that's the scene with the worm, and my husband Jeremy was very excited to watch this movie for once.
Awesome.
And he kept repeating all of the dialogue from the worm before we were watching this, like, hello. I knew which character he was referencing, but I was like, why is this the scene that you've fully memorized?
That's so funny.
He hadn't seen this movie in at least maybe 20 years, but like remembers the worm scene verbatim and was just like, oh, you better not go that way. It goes straight to the castle.
I know. Hey, folks don't remember, this is right before the Sarah character is getting so frustrated. There's no turns in this maze, and then the worm pops up. Hello. And it's sort of the first life lesson of things aren't like they seem. You just accept the fact that there's this like weirdo puppet, tiny little worm that she talks to. I love that he remembered that because I didn't remember any of these little characters before I watched it again.
There were bits and pieces of it. I remembered the Fireys throwing their heads because when we were 22 and 21 years old watching that drunk at Sarah's house, I remember that being a scene where I was like, whoa, I am not high enough for this. Like, what are they doing? They're throwing their heads at each other. She's throwing their heads. Why? What is happening here? So
there are certain parts that are more memorable than others. But it's sort of delightful if you're like me and haven't seen it in a long time and you're like, oh yeah, I remember the worm, or oh yeah, I remember the weirdo dancing headless puppet Fraggle Rock.
Well, I, until this viewing, hadn't noticed that it was Terry Jones as the screenwriter, and it was like, oh my God, Monty Python has a hand in this. Great.
Oh yeah, you can kind of see that in just that one scene with the worm.
The worm, or like there's the scene with the cleaner ball that comes rolling through and it's all like mechanical stuff that's going to kill them and they have to break the door open. But that just looks like such a Monty Python prop that, run away kind of. Yeah, there's definitely like a little bit of a Holy Grail, Monty Python and the Holy Grail vibe peppered into this movie in certain places. So one of the things that popped up in my head as I'm watching this, and this is coming from a couple of years of visiting Halloween Horror Nights down in Orlando around this time of year, but also Disney has bought all of the Jim Henson catalog. Why is there not a Labyrinth amusement park?
Oh my God. Why not?
Why isn't that a
It
thing?
should be.
You should be able to like walk through it or, make it accessible, but like you should be able to wander through the labyrinth and have things pop out at you and have to figure things out. Like make it an escape room.
Oh
Have
my God.
animatronic David Bowie at the end. Go nuts. But like, why wasn't this ever made into an amusement
It
park
should have been. There has to
attraction?
be an escape room somewhere that is Labyrinth on some
That would
level.
be so
It would be
cool.
so cool. It'd be so specific to our generation, but that would be
But kids would
amazing.
still love it. It sounds like your kids, I think,
Oh
reacted to
yeah,
this
they
movie.
really liked it. I mean, kids generally like a good quest. It just like we manifested the Beetlejuice
Yeah.
sequel. I feel like we need to manifest this.
Disney Imagineers.
Listen up.
I know you're not listening.
Yes, you are.
But we need a labyrinth in one of those parks ASAP.
Mm-hmm.
And all of the parents will drag all of their kids to it, and the kids will have no idea this is a movie. That's fine.
Yep. It's a good pitch.
Money.
Mm-hmm.
Money, people. Money. All right. We should talk about the characters in this movie. So let's start with our heroine. This is Jennifer Connelly as Sarah, who is guiding us through the labyrinth and being very polite to people and a little bit naive, where they're like just going to stab her in the back or possibly like decapitate her. As an aside, I think I honestly saw the movie Requiem for a Dream before I watched this with you guys. That's a really jarring, like, oh my God, that actress. Wow. They selected Jennifer Connelly because they were like, wow, she's really the perfect depiction of, I don't want to quote Britney Spears here, but like,
Do it.
She's not a girl. She's not a woman. She's like right in that middle place.
Oh, God.
That wasn't a direct Britney Spears quote. I did that deliberately. We're not singing.
She's the perfect tween.
So yeah,
I mean, I think that's
she
had to be like kind of young enough for that, the way that they were depicting the character. And when I watched this as a kid, I was not 13, so a 13-year-old felt very old and mature to me watching it. And I have to say, now watching it again, she can come up to parents as like kind of whiny and annoying sometimes.
She's a tween.
Yeah, but she's
the "It's Not Fair" is like the biggest tween
absolutely
line ever. So nailed it.
Yeah.
She does have a very like doe-eyed look on her face, and Jennifer Connelly, the actress, was 14 when they were filming this. Her behavior is very much younger.
Yeah, it's tween because she gets upset because her brother has like her favorite teddy bear. This is one of the things that
she's got a copy of Where the Wild Things Are open on her desk, and there's a whole backstory to why that's in there too, it turned out. But like,
they pan into her room and she has all the toys that end up being somewhat characters in the labyrinth, but her room itself you could look at it and be like, oh, that's a kid's room, or you could look at it and say, like, you have toys mixed in with makeup, so you have this very in between kind of room. I think she's relatable in that way, because I think younger kids could think of her as like older.
Whatever age she is, she's having trouble letting go.
That is, let it go.
The teddy bear. She's having trouble letting go of all these. You don't read Where the Wild Things Are when you're 13. Right. That's a 6-year-old's book, and a book that I love. But
great
I
book,
don't keep a copy
classic
of it around my house.
But she is the classic, and we've talked about this scene already, when she basically gives up like 5 seconds into the labyrinth. She walks into the labyrinth and is like, "This isn't fair. I can't find an entrance.
It's hard. It's not fair."
And I mean, she made it 5 minutes before she's ready to turn around. So that is a very teenage or tween thing on some level of just, forget it. It's not fair.
Unfair.
It's unfair. And, I think that's sort of the part of the movie that you kind of then appreciate as an adult. And I like later when she's given the poison peach, I guess, from Hoggle, and the peach is supposed to make her forget what she's looking for.
It's kind of a grow the fuck up peach.
It is a kind of grow the fuck up peach. Because she does forget, and then she weirdly falls into what I call the room of requirement, Harry Potter style.
I wrote it down as the weird drugged out masquerade ball.
Oh yeah, yes, there's that piece too.
Yeah.
But she has to kind of grow up in that moment and remember why she's there. And she literally, her finally remembering is her literally destroying her kid-like room and then clawing her way out. So it's a little on the nose, but you don't detect it on the nose when you're a kid.
Yeah, because it's like, ooh, they recreated my room and they're trying to trap me in it. Ooh, like it's a metaphor that kids are just going to go, oh, she smashed all her stuff and called it junk.
Yeah, and she and by the way, I feel like we should know from Snow White to like never accept fruit from a stranger
Don't
and
eat fruit from someone you've just
yeah,
met.
probably not a
Even
great
if you're like
idea.
trying to win them over, just don't eat
Yeah.
anything that's unwrapped.
Yeah.
This goes for trick or treating too, guys.
Come
Come
on.
on. Don't eat the fruit from the person you
No.
just met.
Yeah.
That's
It's a good rule, ladies.
especially when if you're in a magical labyrinth or like in any place where someone's got magical skills, the fruit is a
It is a
problem.
problem.
Don't do it.
Don't eat it.
We're pointing at the camera so hard and
You
you
can't
can't see
see.
that right now.
We're like trying to admonish all the tweens out
Don't.
there.
Yeah.
Do not eat fruit.
We want you to not eat the fruit.
Don't do drugs, kids. But there's also some other on the nose things from like a character development she goes through. Like at the very end of the movie where everything works out, she's in a room and she looks in the mirror and she could see the reflection in the mirror is each character is saying goodbye to her. And it's like kind of like an emotional scene. And they're all like, if you ever need us. And then she has a quote, every now and again in my life for no reason at all, I need you is the quote. And I love that quote because it's such a mature script writing way to say every once in a while I need to kind of connect back. But then she turns around and all the characters are there and they have a dance party. So it's such a great thing. And this is more the scripting, but you have like the maturity of understanding that you need to move on. But then you have a dance party too, which is, it's so great.
One thing I started writing down was how people were addressing her throughout this movie because it's so subtle that like it starts, it's like girl, this girl, the girl, and then it gradually becomes little lady and then it becomes young lady and like they start addressing her more maturely. And not to be heavy-handed, but her psychology is like accepting the fact that she's not a girl anymore and that her teddy bears are all junk, or in that scene they were.
They were junky. They were 80s junky. Let's be honest.
Yeah, it
was pretty dusty up in her room of 80s stuff.
So I was reading because I love screenwriting and like fascinated how they come up with those little details that appear. Terry Jones from Monty Python, who did the first draft on it, was very much into portraying how people are in the real world. And I think that's what you were picking up on when you were saying there's not really any bad guys.
Right.
And like the good guys have bad traits and, that everyone's sort of in the like middle. And that was his intentional like hand on it. He was just like, I want a young woman, or starts as a girl, becomes a young woman, but her realizing how the world works, that there aren't absolute bad guys, there aren't absolute good guys. And he was doing that and fighting against the other screenwriters coming in being like, but also it's a Muppet movie, like it's fun.
The Goblin King. But I actually think that's really compelling.
He was trying to give it this very human soul to every character who was in there, who's like, okay, there's characters who are good guys and are helpers, but they're also really annoying. Or, you're going to have to navigate this in your workspace eventually. You're going to have all these coworkers who may or may not be trying to stab you in the back, or may or may not
not be competent.
Helpful. Yeah. You may have helpful but annoying, or you may just have like a big guy who just gets angry and throws rocks occasionally. And like that's the modern workplace, isn't it?
It is. That's really funny. And you might have somebody who thinks you have to have their permission to cross the bridge to get out of the bog of eternal stench. So that is a good.
And when you ask them why that's a rule, and they're just like, "Ooh, I don't know.
I don't know. It's just always been.
I got no.
How we do it.
I got no authority here."
Obviously, you see the progression through the labyrinth through her when she's going through all the different stages. I mean, she does suck at going through the labyrinth and needs a lot of help.
She's very inquisitive, but also naive.
So naive.
She's expecting everyone to genuinely help her, and a lot of these people don't.
Right.
They're willing to send her down to an oubliette, like, you're on your own. Good luck. And Hoggle, who is helpful, is also repeatedly stabbing her in the back because you know what, the boss is paying him to screw her over and he's conflicted about it. But doesn't that just kind of set up a lot of our modern conflicts with, ooh, I really like what I'm doing, but the company's doing evil. Shoot, should I be working here doing this job that I like?
It's so funny for Hoggle. I don't remember him being backstabby when I was a kid.
I do. I remember, and he's kind of fascinating for it. One thing I do want to just quickly say is with Sarah's character, any other screenwriter, and we've seen this in a bunch of other movies like this, she would have had a head injury at the beginning of this movie.
That's true.
And that would have like explained why, oh my God, now there's a Goblin King. Like, oops, she like slipped and like tried to like not drop the baby and like hit her head really hard on the floor. And now she's in The Wizard of Oz.
You always want
like,
to add a concussion to all of our movies that we review.
all the way through it, I was just like, they really just didn't have her hit her head hard enough for all of this.
This world is too detailed to not have a concussion.
Everything in the Labyrinth is pulled from her bedroom
Right.
in one shape or form.
Yeah, kids are more okay with slipping in and out of worlds like that versus Amanda Treat, who needs a concussion. But the ultimate compelling part for her, and I think we'll get more into the masquerade ball situation, essentially after at the end, when she has Toby back and, goes through the Escher style stairs and all that stuff, she basically has to confront David Bowie, Goblin King, and say, you have no power over me. And as soon as she says that, it all kind of comes crashing down. And I think that's an epic end. And I remember thinking it was an epic end when I was a kid. It was just kind of cool because she doesn't fight him. She just has to say,
she just tells him off.
Yeah, she just has to say, you have no power over me. And then that's it. And I think it still lands. And I thought it was a great end note for her character.
Yeah, she's rehearsing it at the beginning,
right.
But she's reading from a book, or I read that one of the earlier drafts, she's supposed to be in this play that
would make
the Goblin
sense.
King, and like she's rehearsing her lines.
Yeah.
And so where that might be helpful to anyone who is in a toxic work environment or a toxic relationship,
you
like
have no power.
Practice what you're about to
That's
say.
True.
And then just go land it and they won't see it coming. Be like Kamala, like practice for your
prep for the debate. Yeah.
Prep for the debate. Have your like punches ready. Know what you're going to say and then just sit back and watch it happen.
Yeah, it's definitely a case for prep for sure.
Yeah. Do we want to talk about the Goblin King?
I can't wait. Let's do it.
Oh boy. All right. So I need to call out when we did our original episode on Who Framed Roger Rabbit, my husband walked into the room during the Jessica Rabbit scene and just was taken aback and then said so many teenage boys came to their straight recognition watching her strut down that catwalk and sing that song. So I think David Bowie is the answer to that for straight girls. And probably, guys who swing that way as well. Like
equal opportunity there.
David Bowie was always a very like sexual, but like, what is happening here kind of figure. Mm-hmm. And this movie is, I think, the sexual awakening for so many people. I hate to say that, but that's exactly what my husband said about Jessica Rabbit.
And you have every right to then say it back. It's sort of funny to me because I feel like when we did Lost Boys, which was your birthday pick, I just assumed that's what it was for straight girls. And this is the point in the podcast where I have to remind people that I am the resident lesbian of the hosts. But I think David Bowie to me was like, how can you watch this and not think he's the coolest man who has ever lived? He just
is so cool. Yeah. There's something very sexual, but not threatening.
Not threatening, not smarmy. Like he's not a Bill Murray.
And that's,
no.
Oh God. Bill Murray's like the anti.
But he's also not like how
anti-Bowie.
He is the anti-Bowie, but he's
anti-Bowie is Murray. Oh no!
Oh God! If we recast this with Bill Murray,
no, that wouldn't work at all.
I didn't pick up on creep vibes when I was a kid, and even as an adult, he just still comes across as the coolest guy ever.
I was super curious on this watching because you have a 14-year-old actress and you have David Bowie, and he was such a sex symbol, and they cast him sort of to be that. Like they wanted that rock star vibe. By the time you get to the masquerade ball, and she's coming out of her like, I read Where the Wild Things Are and all these kids' book, and it's just like, whoa, Goblin King's kind of hot.
Oh yeah, she's super lusting after him in that scene.
Yeah. And as my husband would say, does he have a potato in his pants? What is going on?
Oh my God. Jeremy has to come on the podcast and say these things.
That was his comment when Goblin King first appeared. He was like, I think he has a potato in his pants.
I feel like David Bowie had like his potato pants are very like.
I think David Bowie went to the costume fitting and was like, nope, tighter.
Can't see the potato. Got to see the full potato.
I don't feel like I'm not a Goblin King yet.
One of my first notes when we first came on screen, I'm like, whoa, those are tight pants.
Yeah. No, and that's like been part, like a legendary part of this movie. I've seen so many people do Halloween costumes based on this movie and literally put a potato
I
down
mean,
the
you
guy's
have
pants.
to.
Or if it's a woman, because I've also seen women portray the Goblin King and put the potato
I
down
mean,
their
I
pants.
know that this was
Or something, a
a
sock.
sock,
Who
whatever
knows?
it is.
I don't
I
ask.
know the idea of a potato is sort of funny. It's sort of a timeless costume. If folks, if you
It
don't
really
remember it,
is.
just like Google
Yeah.
an image because it's kind of timeless and awesome.
So yeah, at the same time that all of this is going on and adults are like, oh, okay, he still does not come across as threatening.
He doesn't. That's right.
They walk a really fine line here because this is the moment where she's moving from her teddy bear phase to her, ooh, David Bowie phase.
Absolutely.
And it's still not creepy because David Bowie he's keeping his distance. This can be in her head like, ooh, I'm like leveling up to adulthood here, but we're not going to come within 20 feet of each other in the scene. And I read the original script. There's supposed to be some like close face-to-face dialogue in that scene. They just got rid of
Oh, that's a good move because I think the fact I don't think there's any dialogue in the masquerade scene. It's just sort of this dreamy
sequence.
Just
looks. A lot of like eye contact.
Yeah. This is the scene I was most worried about watching it again when I had watched it for the first time with my kids. Cause like we've watched these movies over and over again. And there's movies that, like a Teen Wolf that you're like, oh my God, that high school party is going to be terrible.
Yeah.
And I was worried about this scene because I was like, is this going to come across as so statutory rapey?
Right.
And
it could have,
but it still landed.
They made it not like that. Yeah. It was, all right, this girl is now going into her rock band phase.
Right.
But the rock star who is in this movie is not ever reciprocating, and it still feels romantic, and it almost feels like, ooh, maybe she can hold him in her heart, but like she doesn't have a shot with him. He's not coming near her. Like, nope. And I'm so glad they did it that way because it's not cringy. It's really well done. And it's a beautiful scene too, like the set design and like
it's
everybody
super
in their
cool
weird masquerade masks. And
just to orient folks, this is after she has the peach and she's sort of in this disorientation of she's kind of supposed to forget why she's there. And, I can't speak for like boys or whatever, but, I think that my son sort of thought he was cool because how could you not? He's the bad guy technically, but he's so compelling.
He's a fun bad guy.
He's a fun bad guy. Like it's hard to root against him because he's so cool. It's like I was saying before, it's like he's not such a bad guy. He does look like fun to hang out with. The goblins look like they're having a good time. The baby's having a good time. Yeah. But do you remember, Amanda, that after we saw this in 2001, you and I were in the car driving back to Boston, I guess, and tried to recast this movie for a remake? Do you remember that conversation?
I do not remember
you
this.
You don't?
I saw this in your notes, and I don't remember what we said.
Yeah, so this was my question to Amanda is, do you remember in 2001 who we cast in the David Bowie role?
So 23 years ago.
You don't remember? Okay, because I do remember.
Okay, wait. Here's what I probably would have said.
Okay.
May he rest in peace. I bet Heath Ledger.
No.
Would have been my
suggestion. I think that was too early for Heath Ledger. Okay.
Oh, no, I was a huge Heath Ledger fan all the way out of the 90s.
Yeah, no, that's not who we cast. Okay.
I would have thought he had it in him, but
I love that you don't remember. So we in a remake that we were trying to manifest in my shitty Nissan Sentra in 2001 was we cast Ewan McGregor as David Bowie.
Ooh. Actually, I still
you agree with that?
I like that pick. I do like that pick. At the time, he had very shaggy hair, so
and he had just finished like Moulin Rouge had just come out. So
did the Moulin Rouge.
I think that it's not necessarily the choice for now. I think there's probably better. I don't think you could ever recast him. I almost hope they never remake this movie because I think that would be just too hard to recast that role. But you and I thought that at the time, Ewan McGregor would be the only one in Hollywood who could possibly do it.
I'm shocked I didn't say Heath Ledger though.
I don't even remember you considering that.
He was my guy back then.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. No, I agree. That's a good recast.
Yeah.
That said, Hollywood, don't do it. What we actually want is a Disney amusement park ride or attraction based on this movie. We do not want a remake of this movie. Bold font, put it in red. We do not want a remake of this.
Okay, counterpoint. I think you could
Uh-oh.
remake it. You could cast a woman as the Goblin King.
No, but they would like CGI the fuck out of it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, it's not going to be the same cool Jim Henson level of detail that goes into the world building.
True.
Don't do it, guys. Don't do it. Like, yeah, it would be cool to have a lady goblin queen, but unless it's Beyonce, no, I don't want to see it.
Yeah, it would have to be someone.
Even with Beyonce, she's going to make you spend the money on the practical effects. We don't want any CGI bullshit.
All right, Hollywood, you heard it here. We just want to go to the escape room.
Any other comments about David Bowie as Jareth the Goblin King?
All he's doing is walking around, and he's still really cool doing it.
And then he like turns into an owl, and you're like, that's still
cool.
Like, anything he does in this movie, anything he did in the 70s and 80s, like David Bowie was just
like
cool.
Nobody else could dress like an owl and not look like a fucking idiot. Like
wear tights and shove a potato down there.
Oh my god.
Just looks friggin' cool, everyone. So cool.
Oh my god.
If you don't have your Halloween costume planned yet, just buy the wig, get a potato, get some spandex. Like, your running tights. You got this.
Possibly running tights that are like a size too small for you, and it'll still work.
Yeah. Just make it count. Make it count. All right. There's a couple other humans in this movie, and then we'll get to the puppets. This is another movie where, so we have Toby, the baby brother, who is about 1, I think. And then you have some old ass looking 1980s
What's
parents.
up with 1980s
Once
parents
again
being grannies? Like, what the hell?
It's like Adventures in Babysitting. It's like all of these movies. Why are these parents?
In Toyland. They're all so
it
old.
Looks 60 years old. What?
Oh my god, they're so old. I'm like, there's no way that woman's young enough to have a 1-year-old. She's so old.
And the parents seem to be loosely aware that their daughter does not like her step brother. They come home at the very end of this movie, and you just hear them yelling up, "Sarah, are you home?"
I noticed that too.
Like it's midnight.
Where would she be?
And they just think their 14-year-old just abandoned ship and like run away from
like
home.
Literally,
like,
where would she be?
What do they think happened? And that they don't even seem bothered. Like this was a potential outcome.
It was almost like the possibility that she might not be home.
Yeah, like she might have just left and like
went to go hang out with the Lost Boys. I don't know.
In that case, the 1-year-old's probably fine. Like this, the loose parenting going on in the 80s.
Oh my god, so funny.
Crazy. Toby, the 1-year-old, who in real life, that actor's name is Toby.
That would make sense.
He is a son of 2 of the Muppeteers.
Oh, fun.
Who worked with Jim Henson, so they put their own kid in this. And apparently put him in several not so safe situations for that Escher.
Oh, yeah, maybe.
Ending. Like, so he's crying for real in all of those scenes because it's one, he's not acting. But then to get him to stop crying, particularly like any scene he had to be with David Bowie, which I guess the costume was freaking the baby out a little bit, but they were doing a whole nother puppet show.
Oh, that's
off
funny.
Camera to calm him down and be like, "Ha, fun! Like, yay, your parents are here with a puppet show."
That's
and,
amazing.
Like, maybe called child services, but like we're so beyond that. That kid is 40 now.
Right.
Like,
I know. I was going to say that kid's like our age now.
Yeah. That kid's in his 40s.
But I would have to, that poor kid, as an adult, has to be like, yeah, I was crying in the arms of David Bowie in possibly the coolest role of all time.
If he ever goes to like therapy where they're trying to like unplug some really repressed memory, it's just like, what happened to you that was so traumatic? It was like, I was kidnapped by goblins.
But it was really David Bowie, and he sang at me.
But it was David Bowie, and there was a song.
He wanted to dance.
All of this.
Oh, man.
They made me wear these red and white striped pajamas, and I just was crying, and my parents are right over there, but they wouldn't yell cut.
Oh, man.
Yeah, so good for that guy. He's actually, I think he's with the Jim Henson company now as an adult and does
Toby
set design. Toby lives on, and he is behind the scenes, behind the camera, and he can yell cut whenever the fuck he wants.
I'd like to think in his production office he has a picture of himself with David Bowie. That's what I'd like to think.
All right. Those were the human characters. There are so many Muppet puppet characters that go on here. Or the most prominent character is Hoggle, who is I don't know, troll?
I don't know. He's
He looks like one of those Norwegian
He
trolls that
does.
they make Christmas ornaments out of.
And he's kind of a helper
Not,
character, and then
they don't make ornaments out of trolls. They make ornaments that look like
maybe they
trolls.
do.
I just need to
If you're
specify.
Jim Henson, you make ornaments out of trolls, okay?
No trolls were harmed in making these Christmas ornaments.
So folks have forgotten, basically Hoggle helps the Jennifer Connelly character, helps Sarah, but then the Goblin King keeps threatening him with putting him in the bog of the stench, whatever.
Yeah, the bog of eternal stench is the ultimate.
So he keeps getting threatened and taunted by David Bowie to do, or not David Bowie, the Goblin King to do that. So there are points in the movie where he helps Jennifer Connelly out of situations, but then he also really feeds her a poison peach that she goes and hallucinates. So he kind of does both of those things. And as a kid, I
would argue it was a really good hallucination.
Maybe it was worth it. Does he have any more of those peaches?
He's hooked up.
Maybe.
Yeah. He's your guy with the peaches.
Yeah, I mean,
he's your peach dealer.
He can make a side hustle there, Hoggle. But he kind of does both.
Ooh.
So he's not a pure helper and he's not a double agent, if you will, but he kind of is in the middle and he has a redemption story, really. Because the whole thing is that he's a coward. So every time they run into something, he runs away. And he kind of, I don't know, there's a little Wizard of Oz, the lion finding his courage.
Yeah, he's trying to do the right thing. Like, this is the right thing to do, but I'm scared, run.
But the whole I'm scared, I think, is really relatable to kids. He's sort of the voice of the kid. I think as a kid, I loved him. And even as an adult, I kind of liked his redemption story that you see that kids don't really see.
He does get a redemption. Yeah, he's a complex character for a movie with a lot of puppets in it. And it's good. Not his voice, but the person playing him inside the Hoggle suit is Sherry Weiser, who I just need to do this shout out because we have seen her before in the Babes in Toyland episode we did. She played Trilog, the big weird bird thing that has the giant eyeball.
Oh, that's right. I feel, oh God.
So I think this is probably
a better role.
This is her gold star role here versus Babes in Toyland, which I think they probably were filming both of these back to back. So she would have done one and then the other. She's probably a little more proud of Labyrinth.
Probably. And listeners, we did an episode on Babes in Toyland. I would just recommend the episode and just don't even bother watching the movie. That's my summary of it.
I'm so excited for Christmas this year. There's going to be another one. All right. So Hoggle's the first person character we meet in the Labyrinth. Another great character that we come across about halfway through is Sarah comes across a bunch of soldiers torturing Ludo, who is this big, giant, monster-y looking thing, but with a heart of gold.
It's very where the wild things are looking.
He is very where the wild things are. And I noticed in the credits and then read up on why this was there. There is a huge thank you to Maurice Sendak.
Oh, nice.
Who wrote Where the Wild Things Are in the credits. But it's because his company was like, hi, we hear you're making this Labyrinth movie and you don't realize that Maurice Sendak, in addition to Where the Wild Things Are, wrote this other book about a 9-year-old girl whose brother is stolen by goblins.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And do we need to send you a cease and desist? What the hell are you doing, guys?
Oh, I didn't know that.
So they negotiated it out. I don't think anyone was trying to be a dick here or steal ideas. So they gave him a huge thank you in the film, and then they put his books all through Sarah's bedroom. Yeah. So I'm glad they were able to bring it together and be like, all right, we're all cool here. We're cool here. Because Ludo totally looks like one of them.
He does. And he's it's not, I had forgotten about him. And then, however many years later when I saw it again with my kids, I was like, Ludo! He doesn't, he's a helper character. He can summon
he
rocks.
Controls rocks.
Yeah.
He's kind of an X-Men, honestly. He's got skills. Everyone else is just giving her advice. This guy can bring an avalanche.
I know. He saves the day in the battle at the end.
He saves the day in the bog of eternal stench.
Oh, that's right.
Let's throw some rocks into this thing and we can hop skip our way through this. And he's kind of like Chewbacca-ish. He doesn't say things that are clearly English, but you're just like, yeah, his heart's
you kind of get it.
Like it.
Younger kids will like him, I think, and older kids will find him cute.
Yeah. As these three characters are passing through the Bog of Eternal Stench, they run into Sir Didymus and Ambrosius the dog, who seems to be there to teach us the lessons that some of the rules and some of the traditions are just bullshit. Right. And if you ask enough questions, you don't really need to follow that. He's kind of an anal retentive. He's like a dog that rides a dog. I
I
don't
don't
know
know.
what's
Yeah,
going on
he's
there.
kind of annoying, and he has this like
He is very
chivalry,
annoying.
and
He follows the rules. He's like Cogsworth from Beauty and the
he
Beast. You're
is
just
like
like, oh
Cogsworth.
God.
Yeah, but there's not too much of him to annoy adults watching this again. I think he's funny. It's a funny visual to see a dog riding a dog, and he's silly,
Yeah.
and that's the purpose he serves, and it's not too much. He's just like a little flourish.
Yeah. Fun note, since we're talking about Muppeteers we've run into on previous episodes, Ambrosius the dog is voiced by Kevin Clash, who did the voice of Splinter
No.
in our last
Get out
episode.
of here.
And
Elmo.
I mean, he's part of the Jim Henson crew, or he was, and he did Splinter after this. There's the Junk Lady. I actually kind of like the
Junk
Junk
Lady
Lady.
reminded me
She's
of
cool.
like one of the people from the Dark Crystal. She reminded me of a character whose like lab gets taken over by the Gartham. They might have reused
okay.
that puppet.
Interesting.
I mean, there's just like this is the world building part. There's so many different characters
Yeah.
here outside of the ones we talked about, like the wise men. There's the door knockers. There's the one where she gets to a set of doors where one always tells the truth and one always lies. There's so many little characters like that you meet along the way that are super fun and memorable, and they're not in it too long to be annoying. They're just the right amount of time.
Yeah, things pop up and then go away, and whether you love them or whether you're like, and it's so quick, it's like, all right, moving on.
Yeah, and it works. It just adds to the nice texture, even if they're not like a headline character.
One of the goblins, I could not point to which one of the goblins in those big dance numbers is Warwick Davis, who went on to be Willow.
Oh,
and he's in Harry Potter, and he
that's right,
one of the Ewoks and Return of the Jedi. Like Warwick Davis,
I mean,
huge.
okay,
but he's in there.
So you're saying the same actor was in Labyrinth, the lead in Willow, and yeah, you're right, he's in Harry Potter
and in Jedi. Harry Potter.
This is like, that blows my mind.
No, I love Warwick Davis. He's been one of those like solidly there through our entire childhoods, and like
even in the next generation of childhoods.
He's great.
Like,
he's so good, so good. And he appeared in the Willow TV show.
Oh, that's right, which I haven't seen yet. Okay, that's a future episode though, just to plug that.
Future episode. Yeah. Me nerding out about, it's like Roger Rabbit when they did the Ink and Paint Club scene where
that's right,
the stage is up like 10 feet in the air and there's puppeteers underneath and then there's marionettes like 30 feet in the air, like people controlling it both ways, because they're doing all of that with practical effects. So everything that's shooting around, and then suddenly there's a rubber chicken flying through the air, and then there's an explosion, and then it just all these things going on with they are literally underneath the stage where the humans are standing talking to these puppets and just make it look like a normal thing. It's amazing how well that set design, the production quality, and just the choreography, everything going on in there is amazing.
It's so great. It's totally seamless. We love practical effects on this podcast, and you're going to lose something if this ever was CGI, but this is just as seamless. And honestly, kids buy into it. They're totally in. They don't need all the other stuff. It works for them.
And intentionally awkward phrasing here. We need to talk about David Bowie's balls. He has those crystal balls.
That he's I'm like, always... which ones, Amanda?
He's got crystal balls that he is playing with, and he's offering.
That's right. They turn into bubbles at some point.
It's magic. David Bowie is not a juggler. And so they filmed all of that with the choreographer for this movie was a juggler. I guess it's called contact juggling, but like he stuck his arms through David Bowie's armpits and is doing all of that without being able to see anything he's doing.
That's
he's just
crazy.
Feeling where the crystal balls are going and like switching them between hands and rolling them over the top of his wrist. That's all real. David Bowie was like, are you sure?
So it's
about
actually
this? Like, you
not
can't
David
see.
Bowie's balls.
It's not David Bowie's
It's David
balls.
Bowie's borrowed balls.
It's pretending to be David Bowie's balls. Cool effect. Good job, guys. Any random thoughts you want to share about this movie?
The ingenuity involved. Like there's even a scene where Sarah falls down and it's basically a hole with just hands, and the hands start making shapes.
It's like hand puppets or hand shadow puppets making human faces out of themselves.
Their hands are, the mouths, and they're talking, and she's just having a conversation with these hands, and it's so real. And it's super cool looking, and I think it's still effective for kids. And I was sort of wowed by it all over again as an adult because I had forgotten about it. And then I was like, oh, this is one of my favorite scenes from when I was a kid.
I mean, they did that as a practical effect. So I saw there's a Jim Henson documentary that I think is on Disney right now.
Oh, I need to see that.
Just about his life. But there's this part in the documentary where Jennifer Connelly, and they show the shot of her on a wire, and they just drop her straight down this almost like chimney where all the puppeteers are sticking their hands through and like touching her, and like, but that she was just dangling from a high height. She was like, yeah, they just let me do it. Like, they're not bringing OSHA in to check on this
or a stunt double,
make sure the harness is, she really enjoyed that they let her do slightly dangerous things. But then meanwhile, every puppeteer on the crew is shoving their hands through there with like makeup on their hands to make it all colorful and stuff. And they're doing that all for real. That's crazy the way they film that. It's really imaginative.
It's super imaginative.
I like that scene too.
Yeah, so it's like all that imaginative stuff. This is all about the details. Yeah. Even little things like at some point when she's in the amulet, or is that what it's called? The oubliette. And she's stuck down there, and Hoggle just shows up, and he just takes a door, puts it against a wall, and opens it.
Well, opens it, and he's like, ooh, wrong door, and shuts it, and then opens it from the other side, and it's like, ooh, here's the way out.
And there's so many fun little touches like that. It's kind of magical. So I guess it's, sort of my random thoughts is that all the points in the plot that just move things along, they're all imaginative, like spare no expense, but make the expense just innovation and creativity. It's super fun. We're doing random thoughts, but might as well be things that are great. Yeah. There's a whole battle scene once they enter the Goblin City. And again, the Goblin City is like full of like houses that are on angles and everything looks really cool. It's very like Tim Burton almost. But my son, now the second time he's seen the movie, as soon as they get past that monster and they go into the Goblin City, he goes, oh, he's like, this is the best battle. And he was so excited to just watch the battle scene. And it's basically the Goblin King sends out his goblin army to try to stop, at that point, all the characters.
You have Ludo there, and it turns into like bowling with explosives. Like
pretty much.
He's just sending rocks down on people who are trying to like fire guns and like explode things at them. And then there's just a mess. It goes chaotically. And,
it's so much fun chaos. It's like you have also you also have little side plots like Sir Didymus and his dog, and the dog is really scared, and Sir Didymus is like completely useless in battle, even though he's supposed to be a knight. You have all these little fun details. The cannons that the goblin army is using are like tiny little goblins, and
you have the line in there, which it was because it was Terry Jones writing it. Like they yell, "Run for your lives!" at one point, and I just hear the "Run away" from Monty Python and the Holy Grail. That these like brave knights are giving up so quickly.
And then Ludo calls the rocks, and it's chaos, but it's such fun chaos with all those little details and side plots happening. My son loved it. I mean, I guess you could argue the battle scene goes on a little bit too long, but it's really not. It's kind of brief enough.
It's short enough.
It puts to shame. I know we keep referencing Babes in Toyland, which has a similar chaotic scene, but that one's terrible, and this one's amazing. So
excellent.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about anything that sucks or is cringy about this movie? I have one. So you've got these characters, I think they're called the Fireys. They're the ones throwing their heads that used to like freak a lot of people out. And they try to decapitate her, and they're just weird. They sing a song, and it struck me as so Jar Jar Binks in this viewing.
A little.
And in my head, I was like, is this a little bit racist? It comes across as this is our, like, we're trying to add variety to all the characters in the Labyrinth, but it just sounds like us making fun of a Caribbean dialect or a Caribbean.
I'd have to rewatch it.
Style.
I could see that. I was so distracted by the visuals of the fucked up Fraggle Rock that was going on, and heads are flying everywhere, and then all of a sudden you realize that they want to like chop her head off too.
That scene, I remember people saying, like, that scared me as a kid. Or And like, I didn't see it till I was 22, so I remember watching
Did
it
it
and being
scare you
like,
at
"That's
22?
really." It didn't, but I was like, "Well, that's messed
I
up."
didn't
Like
remember that
these
as a kid.
things, they're throwing their limbs and their heads around. They're vaguely threatening, and like, they're off. There's something very off about these puppets, but they're supposed to be scary to Sarah, and she needs to get the f out of there.
Yeah. I don't know how much intent was here for that. I
Yeah,
I, I don't know. I
who
think
knows?
listeners will have to tell us.
Any final awesome things that we want to just highlight that we haven't already? The only thing I wrote down that I should have called out, we really appreciate the set design in this movie, but when you get to the end, they're doing a whole Escher staircase
Mm.
scene in that castle. I forgot that that was how it ended, even though she's got an Escher poster in her
Oh,
room,
that's
like
right.
so many
Yeah.
people had in the 80s and 90s. But my comment there, I just wrote in my notebook, shit just got surreal.
But dump
Like,
bump.
thank you, everyone. I'll be here all week. The masquerade ball. She's tripping balls, but like, it's beautiful. It's stunning. It's kind of like how school dances actually went in
I
junior
don't
high.
know.
When
David Bowie
like,
never showed up to mine. So
he never showed up in mine, but it was always like, ooh, I have a crush on so and so, and he's way over there talking with all the guys and they're never gonna leave that wall, and we're never gonna go near each other. So just like
so
pine away in your
awkward.
corner here. It's a perfect metaphor for junior high here.
Kind of is.
Closing thoughts on this movie.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my final like argument, if you will, is that I think Jim Henson is just unique in his world building, and it's somewhat timeless, I'd say. It doesn't
Yeah.
feel dated the way there are some movies that we've watched on this podcast that are dated and we still love them.
The only dated thing that kept hitting me was that she's wearing a vest.
Oh, I know how you
over
feel
her
about
puffy
vests.
shirt. Yeah. We dug into that in Groundhog Day quite a
We
bit.
did.
But
one could argue the dated part about it is David Bowie in a way. Kids these days don't know who he is.
I think he's so off the rails looking in this that isn't dated. It's just like, yeah, why wouldn't a Goblin King dress in spandex with like a huge ass mullet and possibly a potato on his
Possibly.
pants? Like, this is what goblins do.
It is.
They don't have the same fashion trends we do.
So with the possibility that maybe you have to explain to your kid who that is, but it probably doesn't matter for their enjoyment.
He is unbound by time and space. He is David Bowie.
This movie is somewhat unbound by time and space.
You got my husband, who hates all the movies we watch, to sit through this and do the hello scene.
He's got to come on. I want him to pick the next movie. But anyway, so let's move to rating. Here's where we will first go through, does it live up to us as adults? We rate it from 1 to 10, 1 being garbage, 10 being Princess Bride. And then we will rate it for kids. Does it live up to kids today? But starting with adults, what you got for me?
I think I'm going an 8, which
that's high for you.
It's very, very high for me, but I enjoyed watching this again, and I again have never seen this sober.
So I'm gonna also go high. I know that I picked this as my birthday movie. To me, the difference between an 8 or a 9 and let's say a 10 is, do you find something surprising about it, or that something new to appreciate about it? And to me, I do. I think you sort of see the transition of the tween growing up, that the whole thing's a metaphor. Her last thing about you have no power over me. So I'm giving this a 10. I think it's a solid 10.
Is this your first ever 10 for a kids movie? No, you gave Home Alone.
I did give Home Alone a 10.
Good company. That's a very high score for us, but we are not done rating. The kids rating comes next. Now, I did not watch this with kids. I watched this with my husband, who got the hiccups through the final act, but that just added to the drama, I feel.
Yeah.
I'd like to think this really does live up to kids today. Like, I don't think they can call BS on anything going on here. I'm going to give it a 9 for kids.
Great score. So yeah, I watched it with my kids twice now. And like I had mentioned, our friend Liz also has watched this with her kids. And, she had said that just that day, her kids asked to watch it again. So I know these are focus groups of just a couple of families, but I think kids do still, it resonates with them. The story, the journey, whatever it is. So I'm going to go high too. I was going to go a 9. I agree with you. I think the only reason maybe it's not a 10, Home Alone, they will watch over and over again. There are some, like Princess Bride, they will watch over and over again. Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast. But to me, it's up there with like a Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin, a Princess Bride. And so a 9 feels good.
All right. Well, we've scored this quite a bit higher than Aladdin. We're at the total of 36 right now, which is pretty darn high for us. It's not a Home Alone 39, but because we adhere to math on this podcast and we do know where a movie with this score is going to land. So
right. So the
not
final
to spoil
question
it for ourselves, but I think we know where this is going.
I think we know where this is going. So the final question, regardless of scores, does this live up, yay or nay? And we both have to agree for it to officially live up. We have had split decisions where somebody's absolutely loved this movie and the other person just completely tanks it. As you were saying, rule of math, we now know, having done this many episodes, where things tend to fall. I think there are, entire movies that have not gotten above an 18 that we've done, but this one is at a 36.
Babes in Toyland, for example.
Yeah, well, that one's a fucking terrible movie. Obviously, I've been gushing about this. I say it lives up, and I'm crossing my fingers that Amanda agrees.
Yeah, yes! Happy birthday. It lives up.
This lives up. All right.
Yeah, this is still fun to watch. Everyone go check it out again. And if you're like me, have a few glasses of wine while you're watching it, because I've never seen it sober. But I think soberly it was.
I have seen it sober, and it's just as good. Parents, don't hesitate to watch this with your kids. I do think regardless of age, they'll like it. I was even playing a little David Bowie, and my son was kind of listening to it. Plug for socials. Let us know what we missed. Were we too gushy? Did you, for some reason, think this shouldn't live up? In which case, get the F out. You could reach us on all the socials at LiveUpPod and then at liveuppod@gmail.com.
And on October 31st for Halloween, come visit the Labyrinth in my front yard.
Come visit the Kelly Can Conway Witch.
Should I dress as the Goblin King this year?
Don't forget the potato.
I have potatoes in the drawer. We're ready. I'm so ready with this costume. All right. Well, happy birthday, Jess. And thanks for listening, everyone.